Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a fascinating journey inside the most complex, perfectly engineered system on the entire planet, your own body. I want you to think of a living organism, not just as a creature, but as an incredibly efficient, automated factory. I mean, think about it. It's a factory that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's constantly processing raw materials, generating power, shipping supplies, and managing waste. It is, without a doubt, an absolute masterpiece of biological engineering.
So, that brings us to a pretty profound question. What exactly keeps you alive? If you were to ask a mechanic what keeps a car running, well, they'd point to the engine, the fuel pump, the exhaust. For us, it's a set of core, non-stop activities performed by our bodies to maintain life. These are the fundamental processes that help us grow, repair damage, and ultimately survive. Because without these basic activities firing on all cylinders, the entire biological factory simply shuts down.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand how this works, we're going to look at the 4 distinct departments that keep things running. Number 1, nutrition. Number 2, respiration. Number 3, transportation. And number 4, excretion.
Let's start with Department 1, fueling up, nutrition.
Now, when we talk about nutrition, we aren't just talking about the simple act of eating an apple or grabbing a sandwich. Nutrition is the complete process of obtaining food and actually utilizing it for energy, growth, tissue repair, and immune defense. It's the incredibly complex breakdown of your lunch into microscopic, usable cellular building blocks that your body desperately needs to function.
Of course, different factories source their raw materials differently, right? On one hand, we have autotrophic nutrition, which is basically the ultimate in self-sufficiency. Green plants, algae, and some bacteria literally prepare their own food from simple inorganic substances. Through photosynthesis, plants use chlorophyll to trap sunlight, pulling in carbon dioxide through their stomata and water from their roots to manufacture glucose. On the flip side is heterotrophic nutrition, and that's us. Animals like humans, dogs, and cows just cannot make our own food. We're entirely dependent on consuming external sources to survive.
For humans, our specific type of heterotrophic nutrition is called holozoic nutrition, and it happens in 5 amazing steps. First up is ingestion, basically taking the food in. Then comes digestion. In your stomach, hydrochloric acid is secreted to kill germs, while enzymes like pepsin break down the proteins. Next is absorption, and honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the body's smart design. Your small intestine is packed with tiny finger-like projections called villi. Fun fact, if you were to flatten them all out, they'd literally cover a tennis court. They massively increase the surface area so you can absorb nutrients directly into your bloodstream. Then comes assimilation, where the body actually uses those nutrients. And finally, digestion, which is removing the undigested leftovers.
Moving on to Department 2, generating power, respiration.
Here's the thing. Food alone isn't energy. It has to be unlocked. Respiration is the precise process of breaking down that food to release the energy inside. In the biological world, that energy gets packaged into microscopic molecules called ATP. You can think of ATP as the literal currency your cells spend to do, well, basically everything. Now, people very often confuse breathing with respiration, but there is a vital difference we need to clear up. Breathing is purely a physical process. It's the mechanical act of bringing oxygen into your lungs and pushing carbon dioxide out. Respiration, however, is biochemical. It happens deep inside your cells. So breathing brings the oxygen in, but respiration is the cellular factory actually using that oxygen to burn the fuel.
So there are actually 2 ways to run this power plant. The standard way is aerobic respiration. This requires oxygen, causes a complete breakdown of glucose, and produces a massive amount of high energy. But what if you're sprinting or jogging heavily and your lungs just can't deliver oxygen fast enough? Well, your body switches to a backup generator called anaerobic respiration. This occurs completely without oxygen. But there's a catch here. It produces lactic acid in human muscles, which is exactly why you get those brutal muscle cramps after a heavy, intense workout.
That brings us to Department 3, the internal supply chain. If you're a simple, single-celled organism, simple diffusion is enough to move things around. But for complex, multicellular organisms like us, diffusion is way too slow because our cells are just too far from the external environment. That's exactly why we need transportation. It's the critical delivery network that moves materials like food, oxygen, water, and waste, connecting every single cell in your body.
Now, what's really interesting here is comparing our human transport network with a plant's. In humans, our circulatory system relies on a muscular pump, our heart, pushing blood out through arteries and returning it through veins. But a giant mango tree doesn't have a heart, right? Instead, it uses this incredible biological piping. Xylem tissue pulls water and minerals upwards from the roots to the leaves, and phloem tissue transports the prepared food from the leaves to the rest of the plant. It's brilliant.
Back to humans. Our internal supply chain relies on something called double circulation. Basically, blood passes through our four-chambered heart twice in one complete cycle. It goes from the heart to the lungs to grab oxygen, back to the heart, then gets pumped out to the entire body, and finally returns to the heart again. This highly efficient two-part loop guarantees that our bodies get a high-energy, concentrated supply of oxygen carried flawlessly by the hemoglobin inside our red blood cells.
And finally, Department 4, taking out the trash. Look, every time you burn fuel, you naturally create exhaust. In biological terms, we call this excretion. It is the necessary removal of harmful metabolic wastes from the body. And this isn't just about taking out the trash for the sake of it, it's literally about survival. Excretion prevents toxicity, maintains our water balance, and regulates our entire internal environment. You experience this firsthand every single day when passing urine or sweating on a hot afternoon. So here is how this waste management flow actually works. Your blood is constantly being filtered. It enters your kidneys, which act as the ultimate sorting facility. Deep inside, these microscopic units called nephrons meticulously filter out harmful urea, excess water, and salts. This waste eventually becomes urine, which flows down through the ureters, is stored in the bladder, and is then safely eliminated. And hey, plants have to take out their trash too. They actually do it quite elegantly. They release oxygen, which, remember, is a waste product of photosynthesis, right through their stomata. They lose excess water through transpiration, and fascinatingly, they often store their waste products in older leaves, which eventually just fall off the tree, or they excrete it as resins and gums. All of this brilliantly illustrates the grand cycle of life. Look at how beautifully and continuously these four massive systems loop together. Nutrition brings the fuel in. Respiration unlocks the power. Transportation supplies that power to every single corner of the body. And excretion safely removes the resulting waste. If any one of these departments goes on strike, the factory shuts down. But together they create a perfect, self-sustaining loop. I want to leave you with this final, crazy thought. In just the few minutes it took to go through this explainer together, you ingested nutrients, your cells broke down glucose into ATP, your heart pumped blood in a double circulation loop over hundreds of times, and your nephrons quietly filtered out microscopic toxins. Millions of these exact life processes just fired perfectly inside you on complete autopilot, keeping you alive this very second. Isn't biology absolutely incredible? Keep wondering, keep learning, and hey, Maybe thank your biological factory for putting in the work today.